what a great turnout. Oh my goodness. See, you can tell the weather's broken, the leaves are unfurling, and Meg Mott is in the house. A sure sign of spring. Thanks for coming out tonight to this event, which is co-sponsored by the Vermont Humanities and Vermont Independent Media, and of course Wyndham World Affairs and the Brooks Memorial Library. I'm Starla Tronica. I'm the library director. If you have anything you want to tell me about the library, please come find me. Also, Lissa is peering over my shoulder somewhere to make sure that I let you know that every fourth Wednesday we meet upstairs to talk about plans for the commemoration of America 250, which will happen next year in 2026, but you just can't start planning too soon. So we do have some spiffy surprises lined up, but we'd love to hear what other people would like to do to commemorate that time. So please come join us. And there are snacks. There will be snacks. Also, I want to let you know that at 118 Elliott on Thursday, May 15th, that Stephen Kinzer, the author of From Overthrow to Blowback, will be speaking about his work. And you can also pick up this little foursquare of upcoming events sponsored by Wyndham World Affairs. So let's, so anyway, yes, so on to tonight's subject. The Unfinished Revolution, Finding Common Action Through Productive Disagreement. Anybody here have any disagreements in like the last year or so? Were they productive? Well, let's hope tonight will lead us all in a better direction, and let's give it up for Meg Mott.
Thank you, Star. Thanks, everybody. Am I shouting? I've got some extra handouts if anybody doesn't have any. These can be very useful. Oops, I can't go. Thank you, Aiden. If somebody could pass them on. I am on a machine. If I get too near there, it will
Some on the desk over there, back
to
there.
all our ears. So hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see people I haven't seen in a while, who I think of. I'm off there in Putney up on a hill, and every so often a random thought. And I think of somebody. Isn't it amazing how the memory goes? You're doing one thing and you remember somebody else. I've lived around here long enough that I get to see people and think, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. We used to teach at Marlboro. We used to go to St. Michael's. We used to do this. We used to do that. And so I think, and my stepmother is here, who I haven't, this is the first time coming to Brattleboro to one of these talks. So a lot of excitement for me tonight to see everybody. Because you're in my head. You show up in my head. I don't imagine that I'm going to think of you, and yet I do. And my guess is that all of us have this experience, where something happens in our head and we didn't anticipate it, and we're reminded of something. Okay, so I am the Constitution Wrangler, so, oops, I always come prepared with extra constitutions. These are very lovely things. I know people are feeling a little nervous, perhaps about politics, but hey, take a constitution. Oh no, here, a constitution. Yeah. Because there are a lot of wonderful words in the Constitution. And this little, I mean, it's tiny, right? What if it had been big? I could have hurt somebody. I'm sorry, MD. I kind of like grazed your head. It's a very little document. It doesn't take that long. Nowadays, like they might say, this will take you 22 minutes to read. And an even shorter one is the Declaration of Independence. Do I remember? Is it under 1,300 words? It's really, really short. So what we're going to do this evening is first we're going to think about the Declaration of Independence, 1776, that moment in time where a lot of people were wondering, do I revolt or do I not revolt? Are things so bad, I'm going to get my musket and go wild? Or am I going to say, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure this is a good idea. And so the Declaration of Independence is something where a group of people who called themselves patriots said, we're going to give you some reasons to revolt. And we'll go over those a little bit together. Like, what are the things that's going to make it like, yeah, we got to do this? I just want to remind everybody, at the time of the Declaration of Independence, only 2/5 of the people thought this was a good idea. 1/5 of the people thought it was a terrible idea. And 2/5 were like, maybe, maybe not. So it's always going to be one of those situations when you're asking a very big thing of people, reasons to revolt, you're going to have to make a pretty persuasive argument. So before we get going with all the reasons, is there somebody here who would be willing to read what many people call the DNA of the American political experiment? And it's that sentence, and I'm sure you all have it memorized, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Anybody want to read it? Gemma!
Do you have a copy for me to read from so I don't have to pull it
I
up?
sure
Oh,
do.
there it is. Wait, let me put my glasses on.
Thanks, Allison. Gemma.
Right up to your mouth.
There's some
The
machines
microphone.
going on.
I'm an audio engineer.
Oh, sorry.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Thank you, Gemma. Beautifully read. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so just with that sentence, does anybody want to say, something I'm going to put on the board, like, because of the words in this sentence, that you might think it's necessary to revolt? Anybody got anything? Yeah, Laura.
Men.
So, men. Okay. All right. So the fact that it says men could be a problem. In fact, it could mean that 2/5 of the people, when they're trying to decide whether to do this or not, do we need to, like, maybe we should, do we need this device here?
We're trying to do Zoom.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
It's not
okay.
quite working.
All right.
It's distracting.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so 2/5 of the people might have said this was not a good idea. You know, when they're doing 1/5, 2/5, 2/5, I don't even know if they're talking about women. It could have been 2/5, 1/5, 2/5, meaning men. Property owning men, maybe, I don't know. Different states had different qualifications to vote. Yeah. But this whole idea of men, it may be like the 2/5 are like, okay. So Laura has not given me anything good to write on this board. In fact, she has said why a lot of people might say, who cares? Is there anything else that somebody might want to point to as saying, this could be useful? I'm going to do it. Anything in that one sentence that Gemma gave. And can you remind me your name?
My name is Prudence.
Prudence.
Don't want to be a subject of a king.
Don't want to be a subject of a king. And was there, Gemma, can you help Prudence out? Is there anything in what you just read that makes it sound like no subject to king?
Well, there is the very first part. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Exactly. The minute you start talking like that, that means you're not a loyalist. Now, Laura's point aside, and we could say, well, maybe they meant man in its most general form. Well, yeah, Aiden.
It also says by consent of the governed. So the governed could consent to be governed by a first among equals king, but if they don't want that king, it's not a right to govern.
So we've got two things. One is consent of the governed. The other one is we hold this truth to be self-evident that we're all equals. And if you're part of a monarchy, you're like, no, not all of us are equal. Some of us have divine rights. Others of us are just hoi polloi. So those two things, consent of the governed, consent to be governed, and equals. Jerry.
Greed.
Greed?
Yes.
But I don't think Gemma said greed.
Hmm?
We're looking for
Oh,
words.
I can explain it.
Okay,
It says, all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. But if that's not the case, it's a reason to revolt. It
Right.
could be.
so
It could.
it could be. All right, and Jerry is wanting to jump ahead in the lesson. He hasn't seen the whole thing. He wants to jump ahead. Right now, we're trying to find affirmative principles that are going to make us want to revolt. Eventually, we're going to look for reasons why the king does not deserve our allegiance and why we should revolt. And you, I forgot your name.
Annie Landenberger.
Annie, I've talked to you on Zoom just
We
recently.
did talk. It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
What do you think about this language, Annie?
Let's get out there.
It is the right of the people. You want to say it? Yeah.
It is the right of,
the
well,
people.
and this is in following, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, in other words, of our shared equality, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
That's an
get
enormous
busy.
right. I mean, I just want everyone to know what that right is saying. And we should feel a little sick to our stomachs. Right? Well, because if you have a right, that means you have an opportunity. And this is a grievous, this is a glorious, this is a heavy opportunity. This is a collective right that's listed in the Declaration of Independence. Now, when I talked about the Declaration of Independence right after January 6, 2021, people were feeling like, really? I don't like this language. So we should always realize this language is there. It's a collective right. It's not an individual right. A lot of times in this country, we talk about individual rights. Right to bodily autonomy, that's an individual right. This one in the Declaration is a collective right. And it's paired to a certain right in the Bill of Rights. Anybody know what one I'm talking about?
To bear arms?
To bear arms. Laura, got it.
I've been studying.
Laura has been studying, that's very good, because otherwise I'm going to ask Gemma. I'm going to guess Gemma wouldn't know the answer to this. A collective right is the right to bear arms. So the Second Amendment ties to this in the Declaration of Independence, and Gemma wants to say something.
If I just could, I would very much dispute that collective rights interpretation.
For the Second Amendment.
For any right.
Oh, interesting.
For a lot of constitutional scholars, there is no such thing as a collective right. Rights are inherent in the people only as a fact of their existence. And while some rights can only be expressed collectively, the right itself belongs to the individual.
Great, great. So this is a strong argument against collective rights. Now, in the Declaration of Independence, it says the people, so that's clearly a collective right. But Gemma's saying, don't go so fast on that road, Meg Mott. Don't go down that road so fast. I'm relying on Akil Reed Amar to make this argument. We the people starts the Constitution, so that there are some collective rights. The 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment, we can get into some really very small details, but maybe not so much tonight. I would say the argument that is the right of the people. And anytime you're saying people, that means the collective right. But this is obviously contentious. Are we having a productive disagreement yet? I got 2 hands up, but then I got to move us along. Steve, and then Daniel.
Well, it's just the word the. If it didn't say the people, if it said people, then it would be individual. If it's the people becomes a collective.
And Gemma's fine in the Declaration of Independence, my guess is. It's only when it turns into is our rights individual or collective. In the language in the Declaration does appear to be collective. Yeah, Daniel.
So then in linking it to the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms is quite strictly limited to raising an organized militia to protect the state.
Yeah.
So it's not a broad-based right, it's a right with a very specific, narrow purpose and walls around it.
Yeah. So, and what we're having right now, which is so great, you can take a text and disagree. I'm pushing a Second Amendment understanding that's tied to a collective right. And I'm being a little bit provocative to do that. Then you could also make a very strong argument specifically around the Second Amendment that's an individual right. That's what our Attorney General under George W. Bush, John Ashcroft, argued in order to move into our current jurisprudence. But this is in order to move into our current jurisprudence on the Second Amendment. Invite me back to talk about the Second Amendment. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to go to Greeno, and then we're going back to the Declaration. Yes?
I like the phrase, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which many, many people currently are finding rather difficult.
So, Greeno.
That's worth fighting for.
So, here's our great question, and I know Greeno doesn't have a mic. Can people hear Greeno?
Yeah.
Okay. What's happiness, Greeno?
Whatever an individual decides it is. It's based on being alive and lively and free.
Life? Yeah, I'll go with that. Liberty, yes. But what? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's happiness?
It's up to the individual, I guess.
Oh, interesting. It's the pursuit of happiness. MD. What does MD think?
But those things, the happiness and what one person thinks happiness is and the other might disagree.
Yeah.
Those can be conflict right there.
Could be a good conflict. In fact, we could have a big conflict about it. So in the 18th century, though, they had a very specific idea what happiness was. And I'm a little sad to tell you about this, people, because I think we've lost grip. We've lost a big grip over ourselves. And that is that happiness actually came from the Greek, eudaimonia. What does it mean to do? It doesn't mean to do what you want. It means to do good things so that you feel a sense of purpose in life. Yeah, it has a lot to do with right action. And it has a sense of like not being a consumer, but building up a certain kind of virtue so that you're able to handle things, which is why in the Vermont Constitution they have this whole thing after they've done the Bill of Rights, that in order to follow these really important rights, we have to practice, will I get them all? Frugality, moderation, industry, justice, temperance. Temperance. I don't know. That could be big. Aiden, what do you want to say?
Well, I have a question, which is, I find happiness a lot less confusing and ambiguous than liberty. I think that in the past 2 centuries, we have seen the concept of liberty and the word freedom absolutely
extruded into any and all possible opposite things. Americans are fantastic at construing whatever they want as freedom, even if it means freedom from exposure to whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So, Aiden, and I love it that you're saying you understand happiness better, because happiness means we're all working together to try and figure out how to become better people, how to do the right things, how to become wiser. Whereas liberty, it's going to be anybody's going to do whatever they want. And if we're thinking about property rights and what people are doing with property, there's going to be some serious disagreements. Yeah, so we've got some problems there. I'm going to go to Anna Marie, and then we're getting back to, I can't pick on you just for a second. Anna Marie.
So I'm interested in the fact that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is not a complete set, but there's one of certain unalienable rights, and there might be others.
Yes. Yeah, so Anna Marie Pluhar is saying, what?
Could you repeat what she said?
Yeah, so what we're trying to look at is this section in that important sentence in which we're saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights. That's the big set. Unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We don't even know what we have. We have so much. We don't need the government to give it to us. We don't need an executive to give it to us. We've got everything we need right now. And so life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are some of those. Anna Marie, do you want to say what other ones you might think? Steve will help you, I'm sure. What?
So maybe comfort, safety, love, security, courage, keep going.
Yeah. Would you add leisure?
Leisure?
Because sometimes I think we're working
For the
too
Puritans? Annie adds ice cream.
And ice cream, okay. Yeah. Steve, do you want to add something?
I always thought,
Yeah.
I always thought that that phrase was purposefully changed from what Locke wrote, which was property. And when Jefferson realized that there were people in this country who couldn't possibly own properties, he stuck that in instead because property was a bad thing for him to say, since he owned people.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to go into his intention, but the fact of the matter is, what Steve just said is this language, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, is a variation on a theme started by John Locke in the Second Treatise of Government, where he said there's certain unalienable rights, and including these are life, liberty, and property. And somehow in the Declaration, I mean, here's the thing. Who cares why they wrote it? I've got some poets and writers in this room. The words really matter. So they put in these words, and it is the pursuit of happiness. And all of a sudden, we get to think on a non-material level. We get to think on a spiritual level, you might say, on an ethical level, on a moral level, that this is one of our rights to pursue happiness, to have enormous amounts of freedom to decide what kind of a life we want, and then to go about making that life for ourselves. Knowing that we want to be good people and not creeps? I don't know. Fill in the blank. I forgot your name. Finley.
Yeah.
Finley, I'm sorry. I forgot.
Oh, no worries.
It was the head.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you, Finley.
What stands out to me is the phrasing of the pursuit of happiness and not just happiness itself, because that's a big difference to me personally. If I fail to find happiness when it's all around me, that it shouldn't be the government or the institution's job to shove my nose into it. It should be my personal responsibility to grasp happiness, but the system should not be an impediment to my ability to do that. So I really appreciate the phrasing of that.
Yeah. So we got a great underscoring from Aiden about how important happiness is, more important maybe than liberty, than rights. And then from Finley, this idea of, that's our lives, people. We get to pursue, we get to figure out what we want and go about doing it. Okay, so that's a lot of reasons to revolt. I'm wondering how many people, and you haven't spoken yet. What's your name?
My name's Breeze.
Breeze.
I keep seeing the word freedom in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and I can see why you defined what happiness is, because what I read into this is I should be free to do what I want. However, if murdering somebody is what I think is going to make me happy because I'm a little confused, shall we say, then there has to be some kind of definition to that pursuit of happiness word. And that's
Yes. Yeah, Breeze, what do you think we need?
laws.
Oh, I did not ask him to say that. I just want everyone to know that was not a plan. I've never met you before. I want to kiss you on both cheeks, but if I go too far, this whole thing is going to start squeaking at us.
This
so
is too much for me. I was a horrible student, so
Yeah,
I'm just
so
going to hand the
anyway.
microphone to somebody else. here.
Okay, so anyway, the law. So if we go to the end of the sentence that Gemma read, they say, as soon as we alter and abolish the government, it's not going to just be chaos. No, we immediately, we have to institute a new government. And that government must be founded on certain principles and organize its powers in such a way that is going to affect what to us seems most likely. We may not get it right, most likely to affect our safety and happiness. So this murderousness, no, that's not safety and happiness. Or excessive, Jerry said greed, excessive consumption, that's not good for our safety and happiness. So the minute we destroy things, we are under an obligation. We don't even get to the end of the sentence, like, and now we blow it up. No, we're in like a semicolon, and it's like, okay, now, if you're gonna go over this, big deal, if you're gonna revolt, you're gonna have something in mind to form a new government that seems most likely to us, which means we're not gonna ask the king, this is getting back to Finley, we're not gonna ask the king how are we gonna be safe and happy. We're gonna have to figure it out amongst ourselves, disagreeing and arguing and getting very excited and crying because we're so disappointed in each other and mad because the great project that we wanted to bring forward, nobody else wants to do. But that's what we got. And you have been spoken yet. What's your name?
Thank you for the mic. I'm very hard of hearing and a little soft. I'm very loud, so I know, generally speaking, I don't need the mic. But my name is Kenny G. I'm a street mister in this town, and I don't want to do too much of an introduction here. The way I look at this entire process of, especially this particular phrase, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, pardon me. We're losing the context here, and the elephant in the room, of course, was the king. And the king had the power of ultimate power. In other words, if he decided you had broken his law, he would simply hang you, thus depriving you of life. He could deprive you of liberty by throwing you in the dungeon. And he could define for you happiness, in fact. And happiness in his case, of course, would be to bow him and honor all of his wishes. This is exactly what America is not doing. Okay, and this is at least what we say we're not doing. One word that before I get further into this, and I don't want to get too much going here because I do tend to talk a lot. I like to write, I like to philosophize, and I like politics actually. I enjoy it as long as I'm not, trying to hang Mike Pence or something like that. As long as we're behaving properly. Just to answer very quickly, this idea that if we get too far into the definition of particular aspects of the phrase, when we say the pursuit of happiness and then try to define happiness, I think obviously you can see there's a lot of opinions on that. We're going to get ourselves into a little bit of trouble with that. So what I like to do is just say that if someone is pursuing happiness by murdering somebody, they are in fact infringing on, in fact they've deprived someone else of the right of life. So in other words, if there's a give and take here, that's obvious. If my pursuit of happiness harms other people, we don't need to philosophize about that. We need to put them in jail because they've broken the Constitution by depriving me of life. And I'll leave it at that.
Great. And can you tell me your name again?
My name is well, people call me Kenny G, but my name is Kenneth Ganem, G-A-N-E-M.
Kenneth, can I call you
Yeah,
Kenneth?
it's anglicized Arabic, actually.
Kenneth.
I'm
Okay.
Lebanese in origin. Part
so
of me.
I'm going to use if you can give the mic.
I'm very hard of hearing.
Yeah. So we can give the mic back to Allison. You have given me what I needed to go to the second page here. Because you are absolutely right, Kenneth. We can talk about philosophical terms, and then we're going to argue about those philosophical terms. It turns out, if you're trying to get the people to revolt, principles are going to matter. Maybe for those 2/5, they're like, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? Been around revolutions before. They don't always go well. The bulk of the Declaration is about what Kenneth said. All the things the king was doing that was wrong. And a lot of those things that were wrong had to do with cruel and unusual punishment. That's something. Did you know there was going to be a civics test here? Anybody want to give me some other things that are in the Declaration, very specific things that the king was doing that became part of the argument, yes, we're going to revolt. So I gave you one, cruel and unusual punishment.
I got one.
Yes, and Laura, what do you got?
Representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his, let me get my glasses on here, his invasions on the rights of the people.
He dissolved the representative governments, like Congresses, parliaments. He also invaded rights of the people. Basically, the Declaration is an indictment of the king. All the shenanigans the king was doing. Invaded the rights. Is there anything else you want to put down?
There's a little element of taxation without representation.
Taxation without representation? Yep. I mean, you start to list this and you might get, well, I don't know what happiness is, but I'm getting my musket and I'm going. Right?
He has instructed the administration of justice.
Yeah. Do you know what was the worst thing? Okay, this is the Constitution Wrangler. He got rid of the jury trials. He got rid of due process. Whoa! Now the people are going, "Ah." You're looking for a right to rebel? Got rid of due process.
He's made judges dependent on his will alone.
It's amazing, right? He made judges dependent on his will alone. Okay, I gotta just take a little moment in time here. Is anybody else like rocking the federal judiciary right now? Yeah. And who appointed a lot of those judges? Yeah, okay. So I just want you to know, when you start to feel like things are really crappy, I highly recommend reading federal judiciary opinions, because these arguments are pretty sweet. But anyway, the king, he made the judges dependent on him. So these are all reasons that the people are getting madder and madder. And maybe we can get from the 1/5, okay, the loyalists will give up on the loyalists, but maybe we can get some of the 2/5 to join this 2/5, the patriots. Michael, sorry.
You're going to have to correct my phraseology here. I'm not sure I have this right, but one to bring up particularly was the removal of citizens to imprisonment in foreign countries.
Oh, did they put that in there? In the Declaration?
I'm not sure I'm phrasing it right, but it's something very close to that.
I mean, this is exactly it. Anything that is breaking the basic principles of common law around due process, around jury systems, around independent judges, that got people very angry. So yes, we have our principles. Yes, we have our happiness. Then we have all the shenanigans that is going on in the executive, and people got very angry, and this unalienable right, which includes the right to alter and abolish the government, started to kick into gear, and then they knew they had to come up with something pretty good on the other end. So, anyway, I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't know about muskets. I don't know about muskets. Yes, we have a .22 on our farm, but that's my daughter's job. It's not my job. I'm not good with firearms. I do not have upper body strength. I have a funny sense of humor. I have muffins. But when I think about violence, I'm actually like, I don't know. I mean, I hate this. And I love the principles, but am I going to go violent? So I just want you all to know that besides the tradition that we have, which is embedded in the Declaration of Independence, that along the way, a new process got started. So I'm going to shift us now. A new way to think about a revolution. We're going to get the same ideas in our head. We got to get people to decide to join our revolution, which means we have to build a coalition. We're going to need to be persuasive, but we're going to try a slightly different approach. And the first people who came up with a slightly different approach to the sentence that Gemma read were the abolitionists. And the abolitionists, Quakers, Methodists, evangelicals. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Quakers and evangelicals.
In the same group.
In the same group. Did they think about theology in the same way? No. But they worked together because they both believed that slavery should end. They both wanted to end slavery. So they changed the language a little bit. Laura's going to be super happy. They changed the language. Instead of saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, the abolitionists and suffragists, 1848, Seneca Falls, they changed the language. They inserted "and women." So that Laura could now say, all right, this is a good revolution. all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted. They got rid of among men. So now Laura's again happy. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, okay, they start to change things. It is the right of those who suffer from it. So this is not a collective people right. It is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it.
Yay.
So they don't have to abolish, abolishing a government takes a lot of work. Just ask Elon Musk. It takes a lot of work. The abolitionists, the suffragists, they said, new idea. We're just going to refuse allegiance to it. This is a very old idea. And organizing its powers in such form as to insist upon the institution of a new government, and then they go right back to the same thing, laying its foundations on such principles as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Oh, that's important.
So they are going to step back from the current order. This is an old idea. St. Augustine said there was a city of man and a city of God. And this idea that there's a Václav Havel makes the same point. There's a parallel polis. Yes, the world is going about in its crazy ways, but we refuse our allegiance and we're creating this new world and we're going to do it. So our way of organizing is nonviolent. We don't need the muskets. We are going to be persuasive, but we are going to do it in such a way that we refuse our allegiance. Civil rights movement went with this in a really big way. Okay, so now this is where we're going to go to 1968. Reasons, I didn't put revolt, because in a way they've changed the language. They've said they want to refuse allegiance to a bad government. So I've used the word evolve. And their idea is, okay, we're going to do a new revolution. It's going to have everything that the Declaration wants. Happiness, life, liberty, equality, unalienable rights. But we're going to go about it in a different way. We don't have to blow things up. We don't have to blow things up. It could be so much tidier, so much better for those of us who have little upper body strength and just want to do our little dancing and cook our muffins. So 1968, and this is in your little pamphlet there, Martin Luther King, who was devoted to the Declaration of Independence, had studied the abolitionists, understood these nonviolent tactics, this other kind of strategy. Somebody want to read what Martin Luther King said in the, do I have a reader? Steve says he will, and it's, if you just open up the, did you, was that not your hand up, sir?
No, but it's fine.
With his voice.
Yeah, with his voice.
We have written a Declaration of Independence, itself an accomplishment. But the effort to transform the words into a life experience still lies ahead.
Still lies ahead, exactly. So we're going to take all those words and we are then going to make it happen. So this comes from the letter from Birmingham, and it's a fairly simple process. And I think you might like it because it's going to not require any massive destruction. So the first thing you want to do, if you're going to engage in this kind of a revolution, I said it won't be so destructive, but it's still going to be hard. He says, oops, do I have one of these anymore? No. Great, thank you. So the first thing we have to do, collection of the facts. Oh, thank you. Collection of the facts. Let's say we know there's going to be a problem. And there's a problem in Birmingham. And we've heard that there's a problem in Birmingham. They first had to go and collect the facts. Now this is important. If you're going to make a big case, I mean, we went about the king. Everybody knew what the king was doing. They had all those details. They knew what the crimes were. They were getting information in 1968 for the internet, of course, but they weren't just going to take somebody calling up and saying, so-and-so did such and such. We should remember that, because we're going a little too fast these days. Collect the facts, which means they would go down into a town, figure out what was happening, and they would talk to all the different constituents. So, Birmingham, they're going to talk to, I'll just say Woolworths. I don't remember if that was exactly where it was, but business. They're going to talk to business. They're going to talk to students. What are students seeing? They're going to talk to police. They're going to talk to the police and ask them, what do you see happening here? They're not going to judge. They're just trying to collect the facts. So they went through a whole investigation. It took a lot of time. Number two, once you had the facts, then you negotiate. You sat down with the police. You sat down with the sheriffs. You sat down with the people who were working in the Woolworths. You sat down with the people who were being treated badly. You figured out what was going on, and then you tried to negotiate something with the people in power.
Did they actually talk to the KKK?
I gather, okay, I don't want to pull out of the history because I could come up with something that was after the civil rights. I don't know of anything specific that's coming to mind right now, but my understanding is they were willing to talk to anybody. Yeah, Charlene.
Yeah, I was just curious, in talking to the police in Birmingham, were the police giving them the facts, you know? What is the facts? It's a person's perception of what's going on, so.
Yeah, so they were going to be hearing things that they couldn't necessarily trust. They were still going to try and collect them. This is going through a due process kind of mentality, right? They were then also going to negotiate with the police, with the mayor, with whoever, and they may not get anywhere, but they were going to make that effort. Clearly important. Hand in the back. I don't know your name.
Nancy.
Nancy.
I'm just wondering who they is, just.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. So I'm talking about the Southern Leadership Council, Martin Luther King. Also, CORE was another group that was doing this. SNCC is another group that was doing this. So these are all civil rights organizations. And they came, nonviolent, and that they came up with. That it had to be this very long process. So first collecting the facts, knowing, as Charlene says, they're going to hear things that they may not be able to trust, but they're still going to hear them. Negotiate, they're going to talk with people and say, is there something else we can do to solve this problem? Because you've clearly got a problem. And then, here's the super hard one. Here's the really hard one. It may be easier to pick up a musket than what I'm going to tell you. Because number 3 is called, and it was the process of self-purification. If you were going to be part of a move of this unfinished revolution, if you were going to be part of this nonviolent, we're taking our power back, you were going to be practicing role plays, being spat at, called the N-word, called white traitor, because there were Franklin, what was his name? Jonathan Daniels. Jonathan Daniels, Keene, New Hampshire. White priest, right? Killed in, I can't remember what state now. In Alabama. In Alabama. So white people were taking their lives in their hands. They're going to be called race traitor, and they're going to get beaten up, and they got shot. Hayden.
This is a digression, but I feel we moved too fast past the Seneca Falls and the how did you phrase it as the right of those who suffer to opt out of their circumstances.
Refuse allegiance.
Refuse allegiance. Can you come up with a defense of this philosophy which does not enable sovereign citizenship? Because I think that this is morally intuitive to a lot of us, but I also think it's really hard to allow that without also allowing that I think that income tax and the fact that I have to have 2 functioning brake lights, this is suffering. And I opt out of this allegiance.
Yeah, so Aiden, let's hold that I think that's a great question, and I want to pursue it. Let me get to the end of my little lesson, And then we can say, like, what is going to be the problems with trying to actually put this into practice? That's a very valid question. And many people are going to have saying, like, this is a terrible idea. Huey Newton is going to have to say, this is a terrible idea. And we'll get into that too. So I've got to like move this along, but then we can open it up. So the self-purification, besides doing the role play, you have to say in your heart, can you not hate white people? You have to be able to say in your heart, I don't hate the police. The self-purification ritual requires you to own the hate inside yourself and say, I'm going to put it aside. And if you couldn't put the hate aside, don't go to the protest tomorrow. If you can't deal with this kind of anger, bigotry, everything, stay home. The only way you're going to be able to do this and have it really work, John Lewis, we saw like so many pictures of him always taking the high ground, is you have to be able to say to yourself, I am not going to hate them. I'm not going to hate the bigots. That's very hard, because if you pick up a musket, you get to hate them, right? So self-purification, that's a hard, hard task. And only then could you do direct action. Go to the protest, sit at the lunch counter, do what was ever necessary. So this is a massive undertaking, a real revolution in how you understand what your life means. And what does it mean to be a citizen? It's a very, very high bar. Okay, I'm going to just push a little bit because I got to get to the Black Panthers. Because this is a very strong argument for nonviolence, and it's also super hard. And the Black Panthers, when they put out their 10-point program, they used that line that Gemma read in the 10-point program. But they didn't change it to nonviolence. They kept the original. They used just what Gemma put in there. So the Black Panthers were like, this sucks. This is terrible. It's not going to work. You can't deal with this kind of racism and just be all self-purifying. It's not going to work. We're going to get weapons. We're going to have a self-defense plan. We're going to take these AK-47s or whatever they have. We're going to go into Sacramento State House. We're going to get Governor Ronald Reagan quite upset, and all of a sudden there's gun laws in California. Hadn't been gun laws before. They used their Second Amendment right. They went into the State House, and the governor of California got buried. No more. So the Black Panthers were not fond of this. Anybody want to like say anything about why? Like, is the Black Panthers? Does it make more sense? Charlene.
I've been drawn to Erica Chenoweth's work. You know, the professor at Harvard who studied revolutions, nonviolent and violent, for decades. And in a 2013 TED Talk, she said that nonviolence 2-to-1 are more successful movements than violence.
And why is that, Charlene? 2-to-1. Did everyone hear what she said? 2-to-1. If you want to do a successful revolution, nonviolent is going to be much more than violent. And why is that?
I'm not sure, but I think it is part of the sort of collective, maybe even purification, but a sense of positive purpose, not just destructive.
Also, people don't want to
Right. And Melissa wants to jump in as well.
No, I'm just.
Can you take the mic because people can't hear?
I think it's because most people don't want to put themselves in harm's way.
Well, and so are you saying it's because of lack of courage?
No, I'm saying that the reason that it's more successful to have nonviolent rather than violent revolutions is because the majority of people are not that courageous and are not willing to put their bodies on the line.
You've got to get your 2 fists. If you're trying to get your 2 fists to join the revolution, MD, did you want to jump in? And then Zah. I'm going to keep it over here for a while, and then I'll get over to you guys.
It's sympathy. People can't identify as easily with someone that's out there raising hell and beating people up or guns, all of that. I mean, there's definitely a side that goes for that. But what you're referring to, that they've found over and over again, that sympathy is more with people who deal with this nonviolent.
And sympathy and building more people and getting more people involved is going to be key. Because we are in a democracy, you got to do the numbers, you got to get more numbers. So there's another one. Sa.
I also think that violent protest exponentially produces anger and hatred. And that's really the opposite of what one wants if one is protesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I had one more hand over here, and then I'm going to just be on this side for a while. If you guys, so Finley in the back, and then I'm going to be devoted to you all. I'm not going to listen to them.
I would just say that, like to create change, maybe I could see violence being an effective means of doing so, but to then create a positive future after that change is effected, nonviolence would seem to be a much more successful route to actually building the world you want to live in and not just tearing down the one you don't and living in the ashes.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if the whole thing of the Declaration that Gemma read, first you alter it or abolish it, you quick have to build it. If you've engaged in a lot of violence, that next generated stage is going to be harder. Now, my guess is that you guys aren't going to be arguing for violence. Is that maybe? Who is first? Well, go first.
So when you asked your question, what my brain said immediately is that nonviolence works because people didn't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have wounded people, and of course I think of Gaza and Israel right away.
You don't have bloody, I mean, it's just, yes.
I actually think that there's an even simpler reason why nonviolence has a 2-to-1 ratio. It's because the force that you're going up against can compete on a violent battlefield. Yeah. They have the benefit there. You have the advantage in a moral status, and we call it a sympathy. But throughout history, usually the side that has more military force is pushing for that. And if you're the lesser force and say, actually, we would like to do the military thing, they'll be totally on board for that. I would like to also say, I could go on for a while about that, but I would like to also say that I think that the Black Panthers and their philosophy are not incompatible with point number 3, the self-purification. It is totally possible and happens continuously up to this day all around the world that people will say, you know what, I'm enlightened, I have sympathy, I think it's tragic that I have to kill this guy, but I have a responsibility to my community. And they are always welcome to come to the negotiating table, but until then, I'll see you in the street.
And this is going to hold on to what Aiden just said. Like to have that in sort of an ace up your sleeve. I don't know, a rifle in the back of your backpack.
The ballot and the Armalite.
The ballot. What?
The IRA's slogan was the ballot and the Armalite.
The ballot and the Armalite going to the IRA. Okay. Yeah. Michael, and then Daniel.
Just going back to the broader concept of the whole discussion this evening, over on this folder we have Martin Luther King, and you were bringing up Black Panthers, Nation of Islam, by any means necessary. I guess the question might be to ask the folks on that folder, who would they find more agreeable?
Oh, that is a perfect question. Okay. And I didn't ask him to do this. Again, I'm not paying this. And I know Daniel wants to speak and Steve wants to speak. But here's his question. What would these people, our 2/5 patriots, who are like, these things matter. These principles are super important to us. Don't forget all the shenanigans happening with the king. You want us to do this? Huh? I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
I wouldn't begin to guess, but I think it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine.
Give him a mic, please.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see Jefferson or Madison arguing for self-purification. Let me phrase it that way.
Yeah, right. Or Ben Franklin, he had these great things that every day he'd start, like, is he doing courage? Is he doing this virtue? Is he doing that virtue? Modesty was not a good one for him. Humility had a big problem with. but that idea of a self-purification could be part of that pursuit of happiness even, right? Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah, my point was also the outgunned is that typically you're tremendously outgunned. So a violent revolution like the poor Irish during World War I against the British.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, go ahead, we'll just take you out now.
Yeah, right, you're outgunned. These guys had a big success. They had something on their side. The British wore red coats. It's very easy to hit a red coat. Whereas the Patriots were wearing more like, I don't know, somber colors that they could hide in the shade.
And they hid behind.
And they hid behind trees. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, Steve's got the mic, so we're gonna let him go.
Well, devil's advocate.
Good.
I'm a little doubtful of the 2-to-1. Maybe it's true, but I look, for instance, at what happened to Gandhi's revolution late on, and I look at what's happening in Kashmir right now, and is that because of the way Gandhi fought? I don't know.
There's still one in the brief.
But I think that what you're talking about is the question of which is more effective, and I'm not sure that's the right question. Which, if the question is simply about I'm going to do whatever revolution is more effective, then what I choose to do is entirely dependent on its effect. And I'm not sure that's the right way to go about change. That it seems to me one should go about change on the basis of what is most right in my heart. So I'm going to be nonviolent, not because it's necessarily more effective, but because it seems the kinder thing to do.
Great, great. And we'll get them. We're going to go back. Sorry, I can't look at you guys on that side. It's going to Gemma, and then it's going to the gentleman in the back in the hat.
I'd just like to say that the reason why nonviolence tends to be more effective is that we have a moral obligation to engage in nonviolence before we engage in violence. Violence is the method of last resort. And we have a long tradition in our legal system of the justification for the use of violence. I'd like to point out that a very large portion of the Declaration of Independence is not just a list of all of the things the king has done wrong and all of the things that they believe about how people should live, but the fact that they have gone through all of these nonviolent means of attempting to change Parliament and the king. And let me just pull up the quick part.
Yeah.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And I just also wanted to tack onto that the part that comes at the very beginning, which is that a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
Yeah, so you're saying, and I'm so grateful for you, you're saying that, in fact, they went through this process. They did go through this process. They went and collected the facts. They then tried to negotiate, and then they went through this process, deliberative process, to try and figure it out. They may not be so exclusive.
The other thing I wanted to say is that nonviolence is inherently de-escalatory. And violence is inherently escalatory. But the ultimate success of a nonviolent movement often depends upon having that final option.
Yes.
I was wondering how long it was going to take somebody to mention the word Gandhi, because there was a very famous quote attributed to Gandhi. And I don't remember it exactly word for word, but it goes something to the effect of all the misdeeds of the British rule in India, the blackest will be remembered as the deprivation of an entire nation of arms.
A deprivation of an entire nation of arms by not having a Second Amendment, not letting people have arms.
By physically disarming them, by
Yeah.
taking the guns away.
Yeah, wow. Annie has her hand up. And then we're going to, I'm sorry, and then we're going to get it back to you.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to be a Debbie Downer here, and I love all of this, and I am a totally nonviolent advocate. But it just occurs to me that January 6th and the Proud Boys was a revolution, and in fact, they got what they wanted. It's in the White House now. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, and that's why I said it's so wild to do this talk on the Declaration right after January 6, 2021. Those words were held in a totally different way.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That, it was violence, and also all the folks out there who own AK-47s, they far outnumber my Pollyanna.
Well, I don't know, maybe. Remember, we're trying to get to the 2/5. That's what we're trying to do. You've been very patient in the back. And then I'm going to push us through a little bit more, because we're going to have a conversation between a Black Panther and somebody who maybe you'd be surprised will have something to say. Yes?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak. So my mother crossed the bridge in Selma when I was 11 years old. And I have to say, the police were not nonviolent. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out is that it's actually a question. Can you tell me a successful revolution which was not violent?
A successful revolution.
Yes,
was
this
not
I'm
violent.
interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Rather than just change of ideas, I mean change of people in authority and so forth.
Yeah, a recent one, the Solidarity Movement in Poland.
Right, that's a good one.
And I think it was particularly smart because they really built a coalition. It wasn't just the left talking to the left. The left found people who might be interested on the right. And so you found a way for shipyard workers, what do we call them? Builders of shipyards, builders of ships, members of the Catholic community. They built a really interesting coalition.
That was a big one, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one other thing. So I would like to see a change in the current administration, and I think that there's probably a lot of people who also feel that way, but I would like to see it done democratically through the Constitution with impeachment.
Yeah, right.
There is a senator in, a congressman, I think it is, Congressman Green in Texas that is trying to go through that procedure.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things, and I don't want to get too caught into current politics, but there are ways in which the current administration is not doing itself any favors. Are they trying to build a coalition? Turned out they had one. Could have gone pretty far with one. That was impressive. That was a democratically elected president with a pretty broad coalition, and somehow the things that he's decided to do have reduced his political power because more and more people are unhappy. So now I'm going to switch us to Bayard Rustin, who's in here. And Bayard Rustin is going to give us some ways to think about this. He's definitely moving out of this nonviolent. He's somebody who studied satyagraha. He's somebody who went to India. Bayard Rustin, the civil rights leader who maybe you haven't heard of, but was the architect behind so much of what was going on. And he said, this is how you're going to succeed. Nonviolent tactics. So what Charlene is saying, the evidence is pretty clear that if you want to do a social movement, nonviolence is going to be far more effective. That doesn't mean that you don't have any violent operations perhaps somewhere else that you know nothing about, and I didn't say that. But in terms of building a coalition, you're going to be far more effective if you use nonviolent tactics, and you continue to use nonviolent tactics. Second, constitutional means. If you're going to make a complaint, tie it to the Constitution. Due process is big in our Constitution. Separation of powers is big in our Constitution. And that's something that I know not everybody's thrilled with this current Supreme Court, but if you're wanting to get separation of powers, reduce the powers of the executive branch, many of their rulings have been very good in that direction, of reducing the power of the administrative state. So constitutional means is going to be key. But here's a really big one. Democratic procedures means you have to persuade more than people who think the way you do. Democratic procedures mean that you actually have to talk to somebody who lives down the road who may have a Trump sign on, or whatever, or All Lives Matter, blue line, who cares? If you're going to do democracy, you have to go with the numbers. One sign I haven't understood is when people say save democracy. That's not an issue. No, we had a democracy. It was an election, and that's how it works. And if you want to change things, then you have to persuade people. Respect for human personality. Oh, the psychologists in the room, the therapists in the room. We have to own the fact that we are deeply troubled people. The human personality is filled with all sorts of fear of shame, public humiliation. If you're negotiating with somebody and you're really wanting to try and make friends with them, you have to show them that you care about their humanity. Bayard Rustin got put in 22 days on a work gang because he was on the Freedom Ride going through with the bus to let people know that actually the Supreme Court had said you can't have a Jim Crow car where blacks in the back and whites in the front because the Supreme Court changed that. So they had their little Supreme Court decision. They're going through Alabama. The minute they cross the state line, they pull it out and they say, look, this is interstate travel. You can't do this. Well, anyway, he gets put 22 days on a chain gang. And I highly recommend, short essay. He goes in there and he's working with the guard. How can I do a better job? He's trying to make friends with the guard. I want to do better in the ditch. Can you help me? And in that shift, it changed. He describes changing what's going on in that particular camp. Because it turns out the guards are suffering too. And he made friends with the guards. I don't know if I'd have that, but I don't know. I'm willing to try anything if I think it's going to get me a little bit further ahead. And a belief that all people are one. So he was very, very careful. Anybody who was an enemy was going to become his friend. It wasn't like we were divided. So those are his 5. He takes this and he makes it more constitutional, more legal. Okay, so last little section. Did you want to ask us something?
I wanted to ask a question on behalf of somebody on Zoom.
Yeah.
But I have to read it. So what would be the most appropriate way to voice our concerns when nonviolent approaches prove to be ineffective?
Well, I think we got a long way to go. I'll take that question when nonviolent actions have really gone for a while. I mean, we're at a very, how many days? 100? Okay, come on, please. All right, last little bit. I just have to throw this out here because Huey Newton is going to be my stand-in for 100% on this side. He is the one who put this sentence in the 10-point program for the Black Panthers. So Huey Newton is 100% down the, if by any means necessary, if we have to be violent, we're going to do it because we're going to alter or abolish the government and institute a better government, and this is maybe what's necessary. So he gets invited to firing line, which is still going on. It's still on PBS. There's still a PBS, and there's still a firing line. So William F. Buckley, who is America's favorite conservative maybe of the 1960s, 70s, he invites a whole series of people. Jesse Jackson, this was way back in the day. And it's a very amazing, you can find this on YouTube, because Huey Newton, and I don't know, if you haven't seen Huey Newton, oh my God, what a heartthrob. He's smoking his cigarette. He's sitting there and he walks in, he sits down, and he says to William F. Buckley, my friend has a question. Who's Huey Newton? Laura, do you want to read? Can we get 2 mics over here? What does Huey Newton say?
And the cigarette.
And the
Okay.
cigarette.
Huey Newton, during the Revolution of 1776, when the United States broke away from England, which side would you have been on?
That's what he does, beginning and firing line. Which side would you have been on? Would you have been the 1/5 loyalists, the 2/5 patriots, or were you kind of like, I don't know? And what does William F. Buckley say?
I think I probably would have been on the side of George Washington. I'm not absolutely sure because it remains to be established historically whether what we sought to prove at that point might not have been proved by more peaceful means. On the whole, I'm against revolutions, though I think as revolutions go, that was a pretty humane one.
So, he's willing to say, like, maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have, I'm not so sure. Huey Newton's like, I know what side I would have been on. I was loaded and ready to go. William F. Buckley, maybe, maybe not. He was a 2/5 person. So what does Huey Newton say?
Huey Newton says, in this society, you're not allowed to organize an opposition against the authority through armed resistance with the intent to overthrow the government.
Yeah, turns out there's laws against that. It may be in the Declaration, but there seems to be laws against overthrowing the government.
Hey, there's someone right there up here who wanted to.
Yes.
I think you can all hear me.
Okay, yes. And can you just say your name?
I first want to clarify that it was Malcolm X who said, by any means necessary.
Right, yeah.
It's not.
No, it wasn't Huey Newton.
Okay, UNK Wade.
Oh, yeah.
A child of all of the nonviolent, violent movement from a family that were a part of Jim Crow. Okay. Now, there are two things I want to clarify. That we are all human beings.
Yep.
But one of the things that about violence and nonviolence has to do with what you are dealing with when you look at melanin.
When you look at
melanin.
Melanin, yes.
The obvious melanin during all of this movements throughout history, her history, our history has been a part of what people see when they, as a human being. So one of the things I've been reading a lot about is what part of us is still from the animal realm that is out of balance with the human realm. And there was a short story, because you talked about India and all of the other work. There was a lion, and she was pregnant, a lioness, and she was pregnant, and she was hungry. So she ran, and she was running and running and running, and she didn't make it. She died, but she had the lion cub, and ended up a lot of sheep saw the baby lion and took the baby lion in and raised that lion to think it was a sheep. And one day, another lion came and was running after the sheep to take the sheep, and he saw this lion, big bully lion, and he ran up to the lion and said, "Why are you running with the sheep? What are you?" And the lion said, "Oh, please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me, I'm just a sheep, I'm just a sheep, I'm just a sheep." And the other lion said, "What do you mean you're a sheep? You're not a sheep. You can't be a sheep." And he says, and so the lion said, no. He started smacking the lion. And there was a place where they can go by the water to get a reflection. So he dragged the other lion because the sheep thought he was a lion and he was scared and he knew nothing about being a lion. And he took him and he had him look in the lake or wherever the water was. And he kept smacking him and he said, "Open your eyes, open your eyes." And so he ended up looking into the water, and with the other lion there, he said, "I'm not a sheep." Okay, the idea of this story is if you don't have courage and you're fearless, if you don't know who you really are, your character, and if you've been not told the truth, like what you're calling the man with the T already a king, don't call him a king. He's not a king. And there is the balance to me that is off between the animalistic part coming out that is out of balance with the human
With
being,
the human, yeah.
educational human beings
Right.
balance of telling the truth, right action,
Yeah,
peace,
yeah.
nonviolence, and love. You know, and not that ooh baby kind of love.
Yeah, 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 right, no, but that's what it's gotta be.
So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. Absolutely. What we need is more love, is what I'm hearing you say.
No, where's the love? Because if you hate,
Yeah.
I don't, you have to take it from out, you have to get it from outside of you and who you are, because no one can give you freedom.
Yeah. And so Rahima.
No one can make you happy.
Yeah. It's got to be, I find in this self-purification, that idea of you got to make sure you're not going to put hate in your heart. If you're going to do this kind of work, you're going to have to go high in terms of seeing the love. All right, I want to go back to William F. Buckley. Are you guys, because there's this very interesting little moment, right? Where it looks like they have very different ideas. One is saying, are we going to go with the big revolution? The other one is saying, well, I don't know. I'm always a little worried about revolutions. So, my friends, can we pick it up again? Who is next?
William Buckley.
William Buckley.
The integrity of a revolution is whether it is established that the people truly supported it.
Consent of the governed. Are we going to judge whether the revolution is good? It's going to have consent. It's going to have some sympathy. And what's the next? Go ahead.
After violent confrontations with the police, racket, the people then were afraid. They said, no, this is not what we want. End of quote. When we were not about guns anyway. So there are things that we have to live with.
So this is a big gap. It turns out they had this whole confrontation about the Declaration and what did it mean and what side is, who's on what side. And at a certain point, Huey Newton confesses that the emphasis on guns was a mistake. This goes back to what Charlene was saying, this evidence that it's not very effective, or what MD said, there's more sympathy. Huey Newton is there on public television saying, I think we made a mistake. We thought the guns were going to be great, but it turns out it made people feel unsafe. We made a mistake. That's kind of a big deal, right? William F. Buckley, Huey Newton having a conversation, treating each other as human beings. Huey Newton says we made a mistake. But then what does William Buckley say?
2 or 3 years ago, a black woman who felt intimidated called the Black Panther headquarters, and they sent someone to look out for her, and he was armed. On the basis of the assurance that she got from his presence, she did calm down and recovered her stability.
William F. Buckley is endorsing the Black Panther self-defense program. You can watch this. They're talking to each other. They're talking to each other, and they're beginning to be able to be enough of a friend of one another. They can admit their mistakes. And then they can say, wow, it turns out I think what you were doing was right. So I guess that's what I'm really thinking about. Like when we're going forward, Rahima was saying, like, don't get too far ahead. It's not like the person who's in the Oval Office is the king. Don't give him that much power. That's what I heard you saying. Hold on to what we got. And there could be an unlikely ally out there. Who knew that Huey Newton and William F. Buckley were going to be like sweethearts by the end? And that can happen. It can totally happen. Yes, and can you, I don't remember your name, sorry.
Chris.
Chris.
I think William F. Buckley was supporting the Second Amendment. I don't think he was supporting
Chris is saying that I'm going too far with William F. Buckley, that he was just supporting the Second Amendment. It's worth listening to all these, this whole series he did. It was this question he posed: what is the future of the black movement? And he just went all these different people. And they're smoking, and they're hanging out, and it's in front of a live audience, and it looks like a bunch of students who are there with their, looking gorgeous. It's black power, beautiful. Afros are happening, and women without bras. I mean, it's quite the time. And that's what these people are talking. And they're just like listening to each other. So I said I would be very careful about the time, and I will hang around for a little bit for some questions, MD, and then I'll go to Amy.
To what you're saying about these two guys connecting with each other.
Yeah.
Our representative, Becca Ballant, tells the story of when she was doing town halls, and she hit all the towns in the state that had voted for the gentleman in the White House. She says they were packed. They were overflowing, every one of them. There were people sitting along the edges who weren't like us, who weren't agreeing as things went along. They did not leave, was the important part. They sat there through the whole thing. They obviously were not fans, but they did not leave. That's the start of a change.
That's the start of a change.
And
yeah.
she helped bring that up.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody who's willing to talk to somebody, it's not that hard. We're speaking the same language. I mean, if people were speaking many different languages in a lot of countries of a lot of different languages, we don't have that problem in this country. We just have to learn how to speak conservative, libertarian, and progressive. I think we can become fluent in all of them. Aiden. Ooh, we need to get Aiden on mic. And then we're going to wrap it up. And we'll let people leave who need to leave, and then I can stick around for
I'm excited to have the last word, because I came to this topic with one big thought. I'm not an advocate of violence in this context, nor am I much of a conspiracy theorist. But I've started thinking in a sort of alarming meta way about this topic ever since I learned that in India today, Gandhi is increasingly seen as a sucker. Now, we all know what's going on well, most of us probably know what's going on in India. But they see Gandhi as somebody who, like, at best delayed their liberation with this nonviolence nonsense. And it got me thinking about, well, why didn't I know this? Why didn't I know that such a large group of people thought this about something so important, whereas in my cultural context, Gandhi is still worshipped along with the civil rights leaders. And I realized that if I was an authoritarian government of any sort, I would probably want to teach my people the wrong way to go about revolutions.
Ooh, this is very cynical.
And I realized that for the little bit of civics that I got in middle school and high school, it was single-minded in favor of the 4 steps that you have there: praise of the civil rights movement. If this is how you want to get something done, this is how you do it, and it's great that in the United States this is how we have it. But I question now, is this just a form of natural selection? Not that I think that somewhere there's a bureau in the FBI or the NSA that's cracking down on this, but in certain subtle ways or through organic processes.
I'm going to ask you a direct question. Is there something you would like to change in the world?
Is there something I would like to change in the world?
Yeah.
There are many things I would like to change in the world.
Could you pick something now that you feel like you could get a lot of people behind?
I'll pick one that is an administration priority. I want to abolish or greatly reduce the TSA.
You want to greatly reduce the TSA. Okay, so then, I mean,
the Transportation Security Administration.
Yeah,
because multiple human lifetimes pass every day standing in line.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so if you wanted to do that, and if I was going to try and help you achieve this goal, who cares what's going on elsewhere? That's what first thing I want to say to you. That you would need to go and find some facts. You would have to find out then what kind of facts, like how are the TSA people feeling about what they're doing? Then you would try and negotiate. So you would have to go like through all these different steps. Then you'd have to ask yourself, like, can you really go through this and be able to work with them in a way that they will take you as a reasonable person? And then if all else fails, then you can do your direct action. If I were going to try and get people to mobilize around something right now, my suggestion would be malaria. It turns out there are a lot of people who actually think getting rid of malaria is a good idea. And there are many, many people who are not going to be able to argue that allowing malaria to thrive is a good idea. So you're going to find, you know, what Aiden is going to have to deal with is dealing with people who actually think that TSA is important. So there will be important counter-arguments.
You're going to weaken the gene pool.
So Daniel's going to say something about we could weaken the gene pool, but I'm not taking him seriously at all. But if you were to say malaria is a problem, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of Christian organizations. Where did this whole initiative happen? It happened under George W. Bush. It was the president's initiative. And it got a lot of Christians and other church religious leaders involved in ending malaria. So all of a sudden you have a coalition. You may not agree on some other issues. You may not agree on the Second Amendment. You may not agree on abortion. Who cares? You just want to build a coalition and talk to people and go with something and say, okay, we just need to get this malaria thing fixed. And then all of a sudden you have friends. And you're going to feel like you have more opportunities if you have friends, as opposed to just feeling like the power is elsewhere. I got a hand raising in the back.
Thanks. I just wanted to make one little point about revolution. It's usually done for valid reasons. The problem with revolution is time after time, people who just want power get in and take over. And it's got to do with that song by The Who, and the words are something like, new boss, same thing as the old boss.
Right. I mean, isn't that always the problem? One of the things about the Declaration is they needed principles, they needed to organize the powers, because so many revolutions, a new set of schmucks has moved in. So you got to be much more smart about yourself and working with others and building coalitions. And so you're not going to be a schmuck. I think we better end it because it's like 5 of 8, but I'm willing to stick around afterwards. And I want to know what Jen was thinking, but please feel free to head out. Yeah.
Thank you everybody for coming. Please do hang out and have conversation. Also, do you wonder, oh boy, I hope I don't ever miss anything this wonderful at the library. Make sure you sign up for our e-newsletter. It only comes once a week, but it'll keep you in touch with all the fantastic things that are happening here. So.